It's not getting it.
Abortion, it's three people. It's the baby, you, and whoever the father is.
Sure.
With a gun, there's way more people that could potentially be involved in this. So you really have to,
Not if it's triplets.
Let me
there's
also,
still a smaller amount of people.
this really doesn't matter too much, but I do want to qualify one thing, because they're listening to it today. I heard a lot of people talk about automatic weapons. Automatic weapons have been illegal since 1933. You cannot go out anywhere unless you buy it on the black market, an automatic weapon.
Yeah, well, which is
Period.
why I said semi-automatic or
Period.
automatic. Because
It's
they're
still-
out there.
It's still a single shot. You pull the trigger for each single bullet going
You
out of that
do,
gun.
but when you
can
have
do it very
10 to
quickly.
20 to 30 rounds, that single trigger is a lot faster than...
My personal protection pistol, I can load 8 rounds into it. I can get a clip that has 12. Okay?
Yeah.
That's just for a 9mm pistol.
Yeah.
My revolvers most of them are 6 shots.
I
5
just
shots.
don't understand why you, truly, I understand like in the Olympics or whatever, when you do the actual target shooting, why you would have the type of rifles that you have. But why would anyone need an AK-47 for any other purpose than that type of shooting? It's
there is a
not
certain
sport when
element.
you go out and you kill an animal. There's no sport in that. To me, the
But wait, I've known people that have used AK-47, the AK-15s to hunt.
The AR-15.
AR-15 they're actually a very accurate gun. That's the surprising part about it. They're very accurate guns.
yeah, I'm
Because
sure
they
they
were
are.
made for war to be accurate. And when you go out and shoot a antelope or deer or something like that, I'm not going to pump 30 rounds into my meat.
Right.
Well, and I guess...
I'm going to shoot it
But
once. I'm going to shoot it
what
once.
is the why would you need that though? You can do it with a rifle or a bow and arrow.
It's
or,
just another type of gun.
What ends up happening, and that is one of the fallacies of hunting, is you actually just injure farmer animals who end up having exceptionally painful deaths. They bleed to death because you're not able to actually
Well,
have the fire.
The last thing I
I
want,
shouldn't even bring up hunting because that's a whole nother
yeah,
subject.
I don't
for
want
me.
to. I don't ever
No,
want to
but
wound
it's-
an animal.
That's
Yeah.
exactly the
I use a very large gun to hunt deer. You know why I use a large gun? Because I'm not in the blood trail. I want that animal to drop.
That's fair
I
enough.
want to go get my 4-wheeler, drag it out, get it gutted, take it down, and get it off.
Okay, so
So this is why it's good to have a conversation with somebody that actually,
hunts.
well, and can have a logical conversation instead of just, it's my right.
No,
Yeah.
Okay, but why?
no.
Why is that?
Hunting has never, ever been a right. Hunting and gun ownership is a privilege.
Exactly.
Okay.
But people,
If
when
you
you ask
abuse-
people
if
questions
you
like this,
abuse that
most of them will
privilege-
say, because it's my Second Amendment right and I can do it if I want to.
You do have
need to have a
you
di-
do have
a
the Second
better-
Amendment right, but gun ownership, there's a difference there. You have an amendment and you have gun ownership. Gun ownership is a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
All right? If I go out to the range and I act foolishly, I will be out of that club in a minute,
Well, that's completely different.
in a second. If I'm hunting with other people and I handle my gun foolishly, I guarantee you they won't hunt with me again.
Yeah, but you have,
But
the,
you're-
you
but
have
you're
the right to
saying-
go there in the first place. And I do not believe that the American justice system, this is a fundamental problem. I do not believe that they grant you rights. I think you have the right to do everything. The government's job is to restrict some of those rights just to make it a society that we can all get by with.
We don't have anarchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
Government
but-
is there to prevent us from having anarchy.
But the government does not give you rights, period. They only restrict them just to make it a normal place to live.
That's kinda
That
well
is the
said,
basis
Chris.
of
I-
America.
Yeah,
So,
that's actually
That's
very
what
well
the
said.
Constitution is basically there for.
I completely agree.
And if you look at our constitutional founders, how brilliant were those men. They still have most things nowadays that are still very relevant to what they said. You read quotes by Thomas Jefferson, it'll blow your mind.
It's interesting, although when people talk about the founding fathers, I'm like, they hated each other. It was massive compromise. It was people who truly, truly despised each other to the point where some of them killed each other.
But
they did
that's
compromise.
gone. Yeah, that's it.
But they
They
did
compromised.
But
There's no compromise anymore.
Okay, wait, before we go forward, I want to hear from the young guy in the room. 'Cause
Now, Brian, you've been
you're
getting
hearing a
older.
lot. You're hearing a lot. What are you thinking? 'Cause I also know that you need to go sooner than later, so I want to make
Yep.
sure that you get any points in.
Yeah, I think some of us grew up in small towns. We talked about that before. And you definitely get a perspective there where everyone owns a gun, and it's very much our right. But it kind of to the anonymous female's point earlier was the argument seems to be pretty often that, well, it's my right. And I remember hearing that growing up. My parents weren't big into guns at all, but some of the family members I have are. And it's interesting to talk to them about it because I feel like, Dave, that we can have a conversation about it. And that's
Absolutely.
really good. But there's some that absolutely cannot. The moment you start talking about moving inches, just giving a little bit, they flip out. But they don't even know why they're flipping out, which I find interesting. It's like, let's sit down and have a
They're
conversation.
putting out because it's a rule from the NRA.
You can't see.
They are not thinkers, they are followers.
But that's going to be true of any passionate subject in this country. I mean, that's true
But you
from
have to be
environmentalists,
able to have a
or from
legitimate
people, wherever you want.
reason for people to really take you seriously.
Okay, well, one of my legitimate reasons is I own a construction company. I hire rough men.
Yeah.
And
Rough
occasionally
men in
maybe a rough
construction?
woman. Occasionally a rough woman. What some people fail to realize in the situation is that I may own the company, but it's still my job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm too old to fight you. There's an old saying.
Now, I don't-
Don't
I'm
try,
pretty
don't
sure
try to
you
fight
could
an old
kick some
man because
people's
he's
ass.
probably going to shoot you.
You know,
You
I
can't whoop your
never,
ass, he's going to shoot you.
I never have a problem.
So it's personal protection in that
Yeah.
asset, plus my home.
Yeah, I never
You
have
come
a
in my
problem
home,
with
I'm
ownership.
taking you out. You don't belong in my home. That's
Yeah.
castle law.
That's why I bought a gun.
You
We,
do not
um,
belong in my home. You will get shot.
I have
we
a 9
talked
millimeter
to-
at the head of my bed because I traveled so much for work, and I told my wife at the time, I said, somebody comes in at 3 in the morning, they're not there to hang out.
Now, they're
I
not.
feel like guns are a little bit like children. They really are. Like it is a privilege to own them, and you have to be responsible and care for them and the people around you in a responsible way.
I would challenge you to go to, Eddie Eagle is the NRA mascot, and when we have training sessions for children out there, when they go out and learn how to respect the gun and how to shoot, and see these kids out there. I've also worked with the Missouri Department of Conservation where we've taken them out and had waterfowl hunts, pheasant, quail hunts, dove hunts, and watched these kids and how respectful they are and the discipline that they're taught. It's a different ball game in that situation. Now this is hunting, but it's a different ball game, and how they react to that structure is amazing.
But that's teaching
they
them
look at us-
responsibility.
But they look at us and say, this is so much better than a video game. This is real. I'm learning how to handle a weapon in real sense. I'm learning that this weapon is a weapon. A firearm is a weapon. You got to respect that weapon.
Yeah, my
Because that weapon can hurt somebody else, it can also hurt you. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
You drop a gun on the ground and plug it full of dirt and pull the trigger, the barrel's gonna blow up.
Really, I mean, what we're talking about are people who, you can teach them what you want. I mean, yes, it is a weapon, and maybe they've been through gun training and all that stuff. I don't know what the guy, he was a security guard, he got taught how to train, and respect a gun and do all those other things through that. The guy just turned out to be a crazy bastard. Out of all the people who own weapons in this world, an exceptionally small percentage of them do crazy shit like this. And yet we hear about it all the time. Generally
because it happens
speaking,
all the time.
it doesn't happen all the time, and you hear about it.
Well, it is beginning to happen at an exponential rate, though.
I
I
would,
would disagree historically. I don't know that that's.
I would go for
Oh,
this
we'll have to
too. Now,
look
this,
that
this
up.
is only gonna provide for the law providing people. But-
Go ahead, Brian.
I'm with him on that. I don't think it's happening more often. I think it's just we're.
You think it's like kidnapping? It
You have
always
more- you have-
happened, but
you
now
have more
there,
media.
now you have
I mean, it
instant
explodes,
media
right?
coverage.
I mean, think of prohibition. You had people
That's well
driving
said.
around the streets of Chicago with true machine guns.
Yeah,
just
machine
shooting the hell
guns,
out of
right?
each
They
other.
ran around with Tommy
What are you
guns.
talking
The
about?
St. Valentine's
That
Day
didn't
massacre
happen.
perhaps should be on the list at some point. And
Yeah.
then-
I would get it to, in order to acquire a license to ride a motorcycle, you have to prove you've been through a training class.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another thing I would go for. If you want to buy equipment, you have to you should have a certificate, just like, in order to get a hunting license in most states, you have to have a certificate showing that you went through a hunter safety program.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Why shouldn't you have to have a certificate to show that you've been through a training class to be able to get a?
That's a good question.
Inches.
You're right.
And
I
I
think
don't
we are
think
back
the-
to
I think
That's
they've,
true.
I
I
don't
think
think the
they've brought that
NRA
up.
would back off of that. Right?
Yeah.
That's actually on the books in most states. Kansas being one of the most notable exceptions to drop the conceal and carry license. They had to have any training to have a conceal and carry license at all, and they just dropped it in July.
I went through an
So-
8-hour training session,
You had to. When I got my gun, you had to do it if you were going to conceal
Absolutely.
and carry. So
and it was very informative.
and that would, yeah, it was fascinating. But one of the bigger issues I think at this point is just, okay, so you do that. This guy clearly in Orlando knew how to operate a gun, went through a ton of training. You know, I don't know if he had a legitimate license or not, but he certainly knew how to handle weapons and was trained for years on how to handle weapons. And still goes into a club because he's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't just chase the crazy out of people. It just doesn't work.
But that kind of leads
Which
into a
goes
different
back to-
subject. I want to change the direction here a little bit, if you don't mind, Rio. Is that when we're dealing with the terrorist situation, we've talked about the crazy situation long enough. Let's deal with the terrorist situation. And the interesting thing about that is that this is a war of cultures.
Yes, definitely.
And you have to think about it that way. This is a war of cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And their culture is so far beyond our ability to understand a radical Islamic person that has been radicalized. When I die, I'm going to go to paradise and get 72 virgins. That is not a God edict. That wasn't even a Muhammad edict. That is a man edict.
Oh, yeah.
That's how you recruit people into a radical form of religion.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take other religions besides Islam, where there's radical issues to it. I don't think anything that radical. They generally don't tell you to kill somebody, but they're going to promise you something when you die.
Yeah.
Or they're going to promise you something if you join my religion, that you're going to receive some type of a sainthood, or you're going to become something.
Well, isn't that kind of like what cults are?
Actually, I think that defeats truly what most studies would actually show. When it comes to radicalism, the vast majority are not poor, uneducated people doing it just for money for their family, or because they're stupid or got brainwashed or anything else. The vast majority of them actually are reasonably educated. A lot of them have American educations from American universities and went back.
Jones and Guyana.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it is.
130
It's a
some
lot
people?
more to it than that.
200
It's
some
not the stereotype of just stupid young kids who got brainwashed really easily by people who were
So
smarter
you
than them.
you deal with that element, and that becomes a whole different issue. I called my best friend, who, as I said, is a gay man. I wanted to get his slant today on this. And, you know, is it a gay issue that he was there? It was Latino night. But he had also seen some men kissing his father, saying blah, 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 but his father was also rather a hateful speaker. And I really have an issue, especially with the Afghans. I think everybody knows that all of our soldiers, and Lane saw it too, the Afghani men in the rural areas have boys. And they have a name for it. I mean, these people are depraved beyond belief.
Well, that's not new. That's throughout history.
That's
I mean, look at the
throughout history.
Romans.
It's a thing that's been there a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But as Americans, we can't accept that mindset. I mean, we look at that and just, you know, if I was a soldier, how do you not shoot that man?
You know, this is the thing I always make. This is the question I've always had in the back of my mind about going over to that side of the world. And here's one piece of historical trivia that I'm sure Chris will know immediately. The only army never defeated is the army without a uniform. And that's who we're fighting over there.
Absolutely.
We're fighting dudes in cowboy boots and flip-flops and jogging pants. They are not soldiers. These people believe something so fundamentally different from a cultural standpoint and from a religious standpoint that I don't know if think about it like this. Every time they're defeated and then, you know, a new government's supposed to be put in place, they always elect another fundamentalist Muslim government. Almost, unless we impose a government, they elect a different version of what we kicked out.
Now,
I don't think these are governments. I think these are just radical sects that cross borders. That don't. You're not.
Well, I think like ISIS definitely
is. It's not a
is.
state versus state issue. You know, it's not one country fighting another country anymore.
Mm-mm.
This is a true ideology problem.
but see, this goes to a different point. As you know, I worked in the oil field in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And I was in Egypt several times. Egypt was always ruled by a dictator. In Egypt, for example, Alexandria in the 60s was a very cosmopolitan place. It had Muslims, Coptic, it had a large gay population, it had European all over the place. Alexandria was a very cosmopolitan city. After a while,
Beirut.
you look at the history of Alexandria, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And after a while, that went away because the Muslim extremists kind of started stepping into the ballgame there. However, the one thing I always noticed about Egypt was it's always been ruled by a dictator. And in the Middle East, us as Americans have trouble understanding dictatorship. Dictatorship is like whack-a-mole. Okay? And that's what they do. You have all these different factions, and they can control all these different factions. One faction sticks their head up too high, starts yelling, boom, whack-a-mole. There are a bunch of them, they hang them, they kill them.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they go, ooh, I don't want to do that. Next one rises up, boom, whack-a-mole again. So dictatorship over there works very well. We see it as barbaric.
Yeah, but it works
But
in that part of the world.
that's what works because you have all these different factions of Christians and Muslims and Jews and different things all living in the same area.
Yeah.
They're able to control it by that fact. And when you take that dictatorship out of the fact, Iran, perfect example. Perfect example. Nobody liked the Shah. Everybody wanted the Shah gone. He was an asshole. Really? As soon as the Shah gone, what happened?
Absolutely.
And Iran has never changed since, has it?
Yeah. Before you got to go, Brian, you want to jump in and give us some young wisdom?
Your final thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. As we talk through all this, we've hit on education a couple times, and I think that it's not necessarily that these guys that go out and do these radical things are not educated, but I think a lot of it falls on educating our population in general to where they can give up some inches. Because I think that there's not an understanding there to say there is compromise, because just by this little compromise, maybe we can avoid some of these tragedies. You come back to Dave's example earlier, which was if we just enforce the laws that were already out there about gun control, then a lot of these things wouldn't happen. But I think you mix that with the not giving up inches, in the sense that if we do start enforcing some of these policies that are already in place, folks will look at that and say, oh look, they're taking my guns away, or they're adding more rules. Can you believe that? This is the Second Amendment. You know, they start having that conversation immediately, and that comes back to an education thing. To say, well, have you actually looked into it and thought maybe these rules were already in place, or maybe these would make sense, and actually you're not going to be affected by this at all.
The politicians love to make new rules, because they like to stand there, I made this new law.
Right, but
I made this new law. Well,
if the population
that
was
didn't do you any
educated-
dang good. The law was already there. You just turned around and tooted your own damn horn. How about we enforce the laws that already been in place?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of leaning toward Brian here, is that the electorate, as a general rule, is they're not the sharpest tools in the shed, and because they're uneducated, and on so many things. It's not even that they're dumb, just uneducated on so many things that you can get just some talking head from the NRA that says these are the rules and this is what we believe, and they go yeah, because they don't really know.
And you can go
or
to the
on any
news
subject for that matter.
The news organizations fall into the same place.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, the news organizations are all owned by some political party anyway, so you're not going to get real news out of them.
I mean, I think it's kind of like the conversation about whether or not you want any any level of socialism in our government. Most Americans would say no, until you start explaining how many socialist programs that are already a part of our government, and they go, well, that's not socialist. No, actually it is.
Actually it is.
Actually it is. But
Social Security?
so you need to know.
But it's balanced.
You need to know what
How much, you don't want to have too much socialist, you don't want to have too less
Exactly.
socialist. You got to have enough.
I mean, some things have to have the profit motive taken out so that they operate correctly. I don't think you go to war with the intent on making a profit, because why do you have an incentive for the war to ever end? Which is, I think, why the wars are getting longer and longer and longer.
Well, that's what we were talking about at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're there and the motive really isn't to liberate these people and bring them democracy. The motive is we want the damn oil, or maybe you don't want the damn oil. Maybe you just want these jobs programs that are going to keep employing
the defense contract.
Yeah, you're going to keep employing people that make weapons or do any of these other various duties around the war machine.
The service industry.
Yeah, and I think that's on a larger scale than just the mass shootings. I think that's a problem. We're gonna let Brian get on his way. He's got some very important things he's got to do. So we're gonna say goodbye to Brian.
Bye, Brian.
Bye, Brian.
Adios.
Thanks for coming.
And so, like I said, that's my 2 cents on a bigger scale than just these mass shootings, because I think we've done a lot of talking and we've made some really interesting points, but I don't know if we've made any real headway on what the hell do we do to stop them or slow them down.
Well,
and maybe you're right. Maybe they haven't escalated at all. Maybe there's just more coverage.
I mean, come on, it's a 24-hour news cycle now. Everybody's all over it. Back in the older days, you could pick and choose what you wanted to say. Now it's on Twitter within less than a minute, and everybody knows about it. I think there's just more coverage. I would disagree that the electorate is uninformed for the most part. I think
I wish I could agree with you.
If you look at how few Americans actually vote, I think really you're dealing with people who are passionate about causes, and the ones who are truly uneducated just don't even give a shit about voting, to be perfectly honest, and no show up.
But to me,
So
that's
I
a
think-
real problem.
I don't think that's a problem at all. I would prefer that 50% of America vote who at least knew a little something about what they were voting on, and 100% of America vote, in which case I think you really will get some true morons out there voting. And the truth of it is, almost every single election, and you can look back through especially recent history has been decided by a 5 to 7 point middle America swing. You know, there are
True.
your diehard Republicans, there's your diehard Democrats, and really as a candidate, once you get past the primaries, you are appealing to 5 to 7% of this country. That is the swing vote every time. Sometimes it's the soccer moms who vote for Reagan, sometimes it's the centrists who vote for Clinton. You know,
Yeah.
you are appealing to 5% of the people who are willing to shift their vote either way. You know, and I don't think they're uneducated. I think they actually give a shit about the issues and know a little something about it. It's interesting.
You
I don't
know what?
think
You
it solves
might
the
be
problem.
true. You might be correct in that the people that actually vote
Sure.
are, I guess my problem or quandary is the fact that, that we're only talking to half the country that's educated enough, because I do think there's a ton of dudes out there and women out there that are just, they've gotten on whatever side of the fence they're on, and they only listen to the talk radio that keeps feeding whatever they want to believe on either side of the fence.
Well,
Sure.
that's just society in general. You group with people that you have like interests and like, thoughts. That's what the majority of people do. They don't